Welcome to Don't Box Me In, the show that features conversations with people from all walks of life, talking about their extraordinary experiences and inspirational messages. Now, here's your host, Lana Reed.
Hello. I'm Lana Reed, and welcome back to this week's edition of Don't Box Me In. Guest fits all of that. Heidi Siefkas was a happily married, globe-trotting professional who seemingly had it all, until a tree limb in New York's Hudson River Valley struck her down, breaking her neck and leaving her unconscious. She lost her independence. She had lost all that mattered.
Thank you so much, Lana. I'm excited to share my story with you and your audience. And it's a beautiful day here coming from Lahui, Kauai.
I was about to ask you, Miss Adventurer, where would you be today? So Hawaii is where you're at, huh?
Yes, I'm on the island of Kauai in its port town, Lahui. Well, I think it's important to kind of realize, who was being struck by a tree, who was Heidi 5 years ago. And really, I was a superwoman. I was holding a professional career in the travel industry, traveling even that much more than I do now. Jet setting, if you will. Right back from Los Angeles to running a convention in Orlando, or even internationally traveling to Berlin or Mexico City. I was also happily married to a Brazilian chef, a homeowner in South Florida, and living a healthy and happy lifestyle in Florida, whether that meant paddleboarding, scuba diving, taking advantage of the wonderful weather. And then on one of my travels to Hudson River Valley, New York, which is about an hour and a half outside of New York City, it was a beautiful fall day, a little crisp, and I wanted to take a walk and appreciate those colors. I had always enjoyed the change of season, but living in South Florida, the seasons are not nearly as dramatic. And I decided to take out the trash at the same time. I left the building, head for the dumpster, and I didn't hear, see, or feel a thing. That's when that 1,000-pound tree limb crushed me and left me unconscious for 5 days. The next thing that I realized, I was waking up in what seemed to be a hospital room, not knowing how I got there, with my husband and my mother at my side.
And was it a windy day, or was it just that it was the tree's time, that limb had... I mean, it's just
it's
surreal.
Hard to fathom because
it's so surreal.
You would think that there was a tornado that came through Poughkeepsie, New York, or that it was this just windy day. It was normal. It was crisp. It wasn't raining. It wasn't necessarily dusting. And come to find out, it was a healthy tree as well. So at the time, it appeared as if I was at exactly the wrong place at the wrong time, and that I had just gotten handed the worst deck of cards you could possibly have had. But it turns out that it was a real blunt hit in the head, a wake-up call, if you will, and it sparked this better, new and improved Heidi 2.0 that I'm talking to you now.
I love that.
After the surgery, they introduced me to my brace, which would be my companion for the next 6 months, and that was to make sure that that bone fused and it would inhibit my movement. So it was from my neck to my belly button on the front, and then on the back side the same. It was almost like a turtle shell, and it made it so that my neck couldn't move up and down to nod my head or even to look side to side. And, of course, it protected my thoracic area so that I wouldn't move there either. It was basically to make sure that that spinal vertebra would almost become whole once again. And I called this brace my cage because, in a way, it was holding me prisoner. But what it did, it made sure that I would heal fully. Now, the hospital was in Hudson River Valley, New York. My home was in South Florida. The catcher of all of this is that I was on travel restrictions. The doctor did not want me to travel. So for the first time in my life, I actually was very thankful that I had family spread out. And my parents had been divorced for decades. My mother lived outside of Boston and my father in South Florida. So I spent the next few months with my mother because I was unable to return to my home. So in that cage in my brace, I went with my mother, and her living room turned into my recovery suite.
Don't box me in. Here's your host, Lana Reed.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. I am with Miss Heidi Siefkas today. She is the author of the book, When All Balls Drop. And before the commercial break, we were talking about, I think it was back in 2009 when a tree limb fell on her and kind of took her life in a different direction.
Time is that although I was going through a traumatic accident and recovering from a spinal injury, but at the same time I was dealing with a very personal and emotional battle. The day before this tree limb struck me while I was taking out the trash, I discovered that my husband of nearly 10 years had been living a double life. And so I discovered that he had another woman for over a year, and I was mortified. My marriage was in ruins. I had been betrayed. And then the very next day, this tree limb hits me. So the title of the book, When All Balls Drop, talks about all of those things that I was balancing. And one of them was a marriage. The other was my health. And then the professional identity was the third. And when that tree limb struck, it was as if all of those balls simultaneously fell. And over that forced pause of 9 months is how I decided to, whether it be pick all of those balls back up, or perhaps I needed just a new set of priorities and values in moving forward.
Did it take you a process to get to that fight that Heidi has?
I guess I have always been very determined, hardworking, positive outlook. I can't say that immediately I said, yes, I'm going to get through this. I had to have some very low lows and what I typically call adult temper tantrums. Here's a professional 32-year-old who is just having a breakdown and being a little bit irrational, but I had to have some of those lows to actually get my wits about me to say, okay, I can put things together, but I can't put it all together all at once. I had to break it down into palatable, goals. And many people ask me why I did not tell people about my marriage. I had bigger fish to fry. I had a broken neck. I had to worry about, were my arms going to work again? Would I have full mobility again? There was a point in the hospital that they didn't know, would I have brain damage? Would I have a full vision again? So there were bigger issues at stake. And so I said, that's it. That's what I'm going to focus in on. Although when I would look at my husband in the hospital, that was a component of what I was thinking in the back of my head. We need to talk about this. But it wasn't that time yet. I had to be healthy enough, stable enough, for far enough along my recovery path to then dive into that. And so it took about 6 months until I was ready to start dealing with telling people what had happened, and then finally making a decision as to what I wanted. Did I want to continue in a marriage? Could I forgive? And that was after I returned to Florida. So there was a component of my recovery that after the bones had fused enough, my doctor said, you may now return to Florida. And the continued care started, whether that was physical therapy, being a counselor about the traumatic loss, as well as dealing with my failed marriage. And it was interesting how being in my home, that gave me the courage to then start diving into some of those other things that were in the back of my mind, the relationship component, as well as what was I going to do professionally and moving forward.
All balls drop. When did you get the idea in your head that, you know, hey, Heidi, we're going to write a book?
I never thought that I would write a book. My mother had always said, oh, you have such great stories, you're a great storyteller. And what happened is during my recovery process, I was writing in a journal. And I did that just for my own therapy. And at the end of my recovery process, my doctor said, you're free, you can now take care of your own physical rehabilitation, basically your maintenance. Keep on going to the gym, eat right, be healthy. My therapist, so my mental health, said, you're now okay, you can go on your own. However, even having those people tell me that I was okay, I needed to prove it to myself. And so I decided to take a solo journey. I went to the tip of South America to an area called Patagonia, and I wanted to go for a hike. And so I went to South America by myself to kind of test my limits, to test every facet of my health, mental, physical, as well as problem solving. And it was on one of these hikes at the end of the world, if you will, that I was sharing my story with a hiker from California. And she says, Heidi, that sounds like it would be a really good book. And so the seed was planted, the journal entries were already there. And so over the course of the next few years, I came up with the title. I came up with how I was going to change those journal entries into a format that could be into a book. And then I said in 2012 that by the time it's been 5 years since that tree struck me, I am going to have my story published. The sequel of the book will be launched, and it is called With New Eyes. And it picks up from revisiting that tree in Poughkeepsie and how I basically re-entered the dating world, decided where I was going to live, what my professional path would be, as well as it talks a little bit about that solo travel to South America and why I keep travel as a component of my life.
I love it. I love it. Author and adventure. Awesome. So where do people pick up the first book, When All Balls Drop? Where can they get a copy of it?
When All Balls Drop is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or your favorite online seller. You can also keep in touch with me on my website, which is HeidiSiefkas.com.